Proton has finally released their long-awaited Drive app for Windows with a Mac app, hopefully soon to follow closely in beta. In this video, I'm gonna share my initial thoughts. This is probably gonna be a shorter video. I'm gonna try to keep it shorter, but we'll see how it turns out. Now, just to be clear, Proton is not a perfect company. So far, I haven't found one that is. Not all claims are made equal. To put it quite frankly, a lot of the claims against Proton are bullshit made up by YouTubers to click links or people who just have some kind of weird obsessive grudge against them.
I'm still gonna always recommend an Apple iDevice over like any Android device to most people in my life. It's just generally gonna be better for privacy and security for them, from what I've done and what I've researched. I don't think Signal's ever gonna remove the phone number requirement. That's like, the whole point of Signal is to replace things like SMS. That's the point of Signal. In order to do that, in this day and age, everything is phone number based. That's the way people communicate. If you meet some new person on the street, you're either asking them for a social media handle or you're asking them for a phone number. You don't ask for their email. And you don't ask them for their session ID. So like, everything right now is based on the phone number, and I think Signal's gonna stay that way.
That said, some of them are legitimate. One of my recent complaints is they're really starting to get a little bit carried away on the marketing and make some really exaggerating claims that, even by marketing standards, are a little bit cringy. And, you know, look, I'm not a fan of putting all your eggs in one basket. As much as I like Proton, I don't use them for everything. I use their email, I sometimes use the calendar, and I sometimes use the VPN. But that said, a lot of mainstream, quote-unquote, normie users do want that all-in-one ecosystem. That's why people use things like Google Calendar along with Google Drive, along with Google Search, along with Gmail. Or that's why a lot of Apple users are really into like the iCloud email with Apple Calendar with iCloud storage. People like it when they have something that just works. For example, when you get a Gmail that says, hey, let's get lunch at, 3 p.m. next Tuesday, it's really easy to just click that button and throw it on your calendar, and now it's on your phone and it's just everywhere. It's super easy and convenient, and most people like that level of convenience. This is Proton's target audience, okay? They're not trying to reach the hardcore people that compile their own Linux kernel and self-host their email and all this kind of stuff, and we'll talk about that a little later. They're trying to reach the people who are still neck deep in the Google ecosystem or the Apple ecosystem, and they're trying to offer them a better alternative. I could make a whole video about Proton's shortcomings, especially at launch, but luckily I don't have to. Techlore already did, so if you're new to Proton and you want a more accurate explanation of what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses and what are they going for, I highly recommend that video because he pretty much nailed it and did a really good job. Now, on that note, let me take a moment because I know I'm gonna get that one person in the comments, and let's talk about why anyone would release a privacy app for Windows. Windows sucks. Okay, I'm not gonna argue you guys with that. It sucks from a user interface perspective. It sucks from the fact that it's always crashing. I don't understand how my Cubes laptop from 2012 is more stable than my Windows 11 computer that is not even a year old, but somehow it is. Windows is terrible, and that's not even including on the privacy side. If we're gonna compare the three-ish desktop options out there, which are Windows, Mac, and Linux, not in that particular order, Windows is the loser. I mean, let's be real here. Finally, there is the fact that everybody is at a different place in their privacy journey. It's possible that somebody is new to this stuff, they're just dipping their toes in, and they're just not ready to jump into a new operating system. You gotta remember, if you're somebody who's been using Windows for 10, 20, 30 years, I mean, these things are habits, they're familiar, and it's scary. Change is scary. Now look, just to be crystal clear, I am not defending Windows. Windows is a garbage operating system. I hate it. All of us should strive to use it as little as possible. What I am defending is Windows developers and privacy tools like Proton Drive. Just because someone is on Windows for any reason doesn't mean that they are less deserving of privacy. Remember, around here, we believe privacy is a human right, which means it applies to everyone, regardless of whether they use Windows or put pineapple on their pizza or, whatever the case may be. Privacy is for everyone. So just for those of you in the comments who I know are gonna be like, well, why would they even bother? Windows can't be made private. You're right, but this could be one step that makes it easier for someone to make that transition to a more private lifestyle, which down the road could result in leaving Windows eventually.
Is this guy a retard?
Personally, I like to have cloud backups of things just because I don't really trust my devices these days. They tend to die at the most inconvenient times, and it's nice to know that if that happens, I don't have to dig in and recover things, which I can do, it's just kind of a pain. It'd be nice to buy a new device, install the app, sign in, and boom, everything's right there. It's super convenient. I've been doing that for years. That's just how I like to roll. Now, one thing I didn't notice at first, but someone pointed out is kind of weird and kind of annoying, is every device you download creates its own folder, which means that, in theory, this makes cross-device sync pretty difficult, if not entirely impossible. I mean, if every device has their own folder, how am I supposed to synchronize between multiple devices? I can't select those folders. You know what I mean? It's just, it's great as a backup solution, but it's not great if I'm trying to synchronize between devices like how I do with my website. Okay, I think I'm gonna end this video on one more legitimate complaint, and that is the lack of Linux support, which unfortunately is kind of a common theme from Proton. And that's really unfortunate because I mentioned at the top of the video, there might be Windows users or Mac users who do want to make that switch to Linux someday. And if this app is not available on Linux, that's a hurdle. That's one more thing slowing them down. So just for those of you in the comments who I know are gonna be like, well, why would they even bother? Windows can't be made private. You're right, but this could be one step that makes it easier for someone to make that transition to a more private lifestyle, which down the road could result in leaving Windows eventually. It's really important that we try not to put roadblocks like that in the way of people who want to improve their privacy. I don't consider myself like a paragon of how to do things, but look at the new oil, for example. We do have a YouTube channel and we do have advice on how to harden Windows and Mac, but we also have recommendations for Linux distros and resources like the Linux experiment for people who want to learn more about Linux, and we mirror our content to PeerTube for people who want to get off YouTube. So it's like that. Like, they need to think ahead for like, okay, how can we help people who want to get off of Windows or Mac? I don't dive into custom OSs at all. I do mention them. I say like, hey, these exist, but they're advanced. They fall way outside the scope of this website. Go check them out if you want more information. I'm not going to talk about them here. But if you do end up getting a paid plan, that gives us a little bit of money in return, helps keep us going. It's a great way to support us at no extra cost to yourself, and it is appreciated.